On today's jam-packed episode, Josh and I are here back to talk about the preview of the trade deadline. We'll go over our thoughts based on what things might happen, stuff that's already happened. We'll give you what we think so far of the trade deadline as it comes closer. All-Star snubs, we'll give a few minutes on the All-Star snubs here. I feel like the All-Star game is always a lot of fun to talk about. It's coming up here in a few weeks, or very shortly. College Hoops Corners back as we approach about a month right up until Selection Sunday and the March Madness time. And then lastly, because of the ridiculousness of trivia that it is, Josh, to be fair, has 6 potential points this week. So hypothetically, he could basically blow me out of the water and make trivia impossible for me. We're going to find out if he does. All that, plenty more, a lot of fun, next.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Trevor.
And man, it's time for trivia yet? Am I going to get to the point where I'm up by a lot? No, I'm just kidding. Coming in 8-4. I kind of hope that I don't crush it all because I want this to be an interesting remainder of a season, but we'll see what happens later. Trade deadline's getting kind of wacky, but not as much as we'd expect it to. So that should be an interesting thing to cover. And then it's almost time for the All-Star weekend, which, hey, NBA All-Star weekend is the only All-Star game in pro sports I actually care about. So should be fun.
So let's just go ahead and start with the trade deadline's crazy because, it's that last 4-hour home stretch where there's 9 things going on and you're like, oh, this guy got moved for that guy. And then wait, is that pick going to convey to that? And then, oh, what's this protection? It just gets crazy. You're really confused. So we'll go over what's already been occurred or had occurred. So far, I'll go over them quickly and you can give me your thoughts. We don't have to touch on them too much because obviously I think a lot of this is what could happen for the trade deadline. And we'll go over what actually did happen afterwards. But Clippers and the Blazers traded. I think that one's going to be really important to discuss for a few moments. But before I get to that one, the Cavs and the Pacers, LeVert got moved for Rubio and a handful of picks. I believe it was a first. I think it was a second as well. It didn't really matter. It was a handful of picks. The Pacers got what they wanted, which wasn't Ricky Rubio. It was getting rid of Karis LeVert and getting a bunch of picks. You can give me some thoughts on that one if you'd like, but the Clippers-Blazers one I think is really, really important. I think it has implications currently on both teams, according to Woj especially, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, as well as it has future implications on the Clippers. So, to recap, the Clippers acquired Trailblazers veterans Norman Powell and Robert Covington in a trade that sent Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a 2025 second-round pick to Portland. The teams announced on Friday, as we're recording this Monday the 7th. So initial thoughts on either of them, or just kind of which one do you think had more impact? Which one were you more surprised by? Whatever you want to open with here.
So the bigger one I think is the LeVert move because that's the biggest name, right? So name-wise, that the biggest one that sticks out to me. I really liked it for both sides. Indiana needed to move LeVert because they're not. I think they're really stripping everything down. They have the 5th worst record in the NBA. And they're going to try to tear this thing down to rebuild. It's just an indication that Turner, Sabonis, Brogdon, even maybe, people are probably going to start. I'm not saying all this week, but over the next year, we're going to start to see kind of this exodus from Indiana, I think. But I liked it for both sides. A lot of picks for LeVert for Indiana, and Cleveland's got somebody in that middle spot at the 3. To help them make a playoff push. I already liked Cleveland a lot, and to add LeVert to that core that they've already got of Garland, Allen, and Mobley, I think should be really good for the Cavaliers. As for Portland and LAC, I was surprised by. I don't know if I'm just not rating your Keon Johnson, your Justice Winslows very highly. I just feel like it was a low price that the Clippers paid for Bob Cove, and especially for Norman Powell, who I think is an incredibly underrated guard.
So before I touch at any point on that Clippers deal. I think the LeVert thing is interesting for two reasons. One, the Cavs were looking because the Cavs truly do think they can contend right this moment.
They
The
can.
Cavs internally 100% think they can, and rightfully so.
I think they can win the East.
So here's the crazy thing: LeVert fills two voids. And I'm going to go with both sides here for a second. LeVert fills two voids. One, he feels the fact that he's 27 years old. He fits the timeline of this team. He's a young 27. He had some injury issues. He came out a little bit later, etc. Right? He's not necessarily a ball stopper. He can score. He's basically feeling what they think Cedi Osman can be potential-wise right this moment. They gave up basically nothing for him. Rightfully so, with that pick being what it is. And he's younger, and I mentioned for the fact that Eric Gordon was a possible target for them as well, and Eric Gordon's 7 years older. So Eric Gordon obviously getting off of a bad Rockets team going to a contender. It was a perfect fit. Obviously, if that's a literal win now move, but they get LeVert, who they've been flirting with for like a month in terms of trying to make that deal, it just makes sense for everyone involved, which is my point on the flip side that you mentioned this, just even could be Brogdon, this guy, that guy. I think this Pacers team is completely unloaded by Thursday's end. This is like a fire sale, is what the rumor mill is floating around. This is a Pacers fire sale, according to a lot of people who are a lot more plugged in than we are. But I think the one piece that you don't see moved is probably Brogdon. I don't know why.
He's the youngest.
He's the youngest, I guess, but like the Sabonis piece of it, people are more interested. I think there's just less interest out of Brogdon. The point that I actually took away from the LeVert thing was that the Pacers have the potential to have their first top 5 pick since 1988. So this fire sale is showing us that, or quote fire sale, right up until the moment that the deadline ends. This Pacers team is going to completely flipped on its head, and rightfully so. They've been terrible over the last 10 years, and they just haven't been able to put it together since Paul George left. I'm just okay with it. I'm ready. That's my thoughts on LeVert. He's the first domino, and this domino train is going to keep going very quickly. So,
I'll argue, I don't think they've been terrible. They've been mediocre.
Mediocres. That's a better word.
They've been that solid 6 seed in the playoffs for the last 10 years.
The Clippers-Blazers thing is way more interesting, and there's, again, two things that come up immediately. First of all, my question to you, and I don't have a question prepared like I normally do, but the question that just came to me right now that I'm going to ask you is, do you think this means Kawhi and Paul George come back this year in April?
For LAC?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I don't either. I think this is a push
to I don't know if this necessarily but I don't know if now I think that Robert Covington and Norman Powell are great players. I don't know if they move the needle enough to make the Clippers good enough to get into the playoffs. And by in, I mean like past that play in.
They don't hurt.
They're not a good team right now.
They're not like the worst team in the West right now, and they're fighting harder than they should be with their two guys being out. The problem is with the pick stuff that they have going on, they have no reason to lose. So they're just winning, right? OKC has their pick. So where I am with this Clippers thing is that this is 100% a punt with the ability to fake. I'm going to use a football analogy, right? Like they are back there, and it's 4th and 5, and they're like, we can get in, right? Like we can get this. We can get to the first down line, which would be the playoffs, or play in and then win the game and get in the playoffs. But they're also like, you know what? We can audible at the last second, and we can be like, you know what? We realize PG's not coming back because the elbow is worse than we think it is, which I think people are starting to understand that this elbow is probably worse than we think. And then Kawhi, just no reason to risk. If he's just like not ready, like mid-March, you just punt. Like you sit back, you take the audible and you punt. The flip side of that is that if they do come back and they start playing well, they're a scary team you do not want to play right now because of just how deep this makes them. People got to understand too, this is a Norman Powell 5-year, $90 million guy, right? This guy's locked up. The Clippers get him no matter what happens to Kawhi and PG unless they move him again in the following years. I don't see how the Clippers lose this either way because essentially if they do go with that hybrid analogy I just gave you with the punt, next year they're going to be one of a top 4 in the West title contender, 100%. Healthy PG, healthy Kawhi, Norman Powell, who you've seen in the playoffs do really big things. Robert Covington is the key piece there, though. He's got to get re-signed. He is a free agent this offseason. He's the expiring in that deal that seems to always happen in deals like this. The Clippers, this is a big deal. On the Blazers end of things is very interesting. Any thoughts on the Clippers side of it before we kind of go through what the Blazers have going on?
Um, from the Clippers side, I think it's a good move for them. Yeah, I'm still in a wait till I see it mode with the PG and Kawhi stuff. I just don't expect it to actually pop up and be a big factor this season.
It doesn't
Next
need to
year,
be.
like you said, I mean, on paper, next year they're going to be one of, if not the best team in the West. This year, I just don't see them being a factor. As for the Trailblazers, sounds like they're blowing it up.
So that's what I thought at first, right? So you're not underrating the Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, Eric Bledsoe. You're not underrating that. I heard you say that a minute ago. Like that's not the case here. This is not their first move, right? And it's not a blow up, right? They are retooling around the fact that Dame, they just don't know what the abdomen right now. And according to Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski, both the Clippers and Blazers are looking to make additional moves prior to the deadline on Thursday. This also has major cap implications for both teams. It gets the Clippers up into that luxury tax range, and then it gets the Blazers down to into the 90 million range where they have cap flexibility to sign a guy in the offseason, to make another move in a few days, to make a move in the offseason, to draft a couple of key pieces if they move up in the draft. There's a lot of flexibility for the Blazers. I think it's really important to understand that they really like and believe in Anthony Simons. And he's not on a huge contract, so this is your place to take advantage of the fact that this is your last ride with Dame. So now that you know that, here's my transition.
Who's a free agent this offseason?
For them,
No, like who is what's because they're opening up that much cap. That's if they keep that cap, then they're like
it's not
tooling up for
necessarily
some big move.
it's not an off-season signing because I think this off-season is very like hinging on guys' options and stuff. I don't have it in front of me. What I am going to tell you though is where I think it's going, and I think there's a potential CJ to New Orleans deal brewing because New Orleans wants to do everything they can, and this is completely my opinion. I'm not aggregating anything. I am just giving you what if they are doing this to keep these salaries like this. This isn't their last move. It's been made very clear by many big people that we trust in the industry. I don't know if it's CJ necessarily, but the Pelicans want to do what they can to make sure Zion signs that extension next offseason.
He probably won't.
See, we don't have time for that.
Sorry.
But no,
The Pelicans need to worry about getting Zion back off the court. Okay, no, move on.
no, period. No, 100%. But if he's smart with the health issues he's had, he will sign that extension, get the biggest money he can, and then he can request a trade. It's just like the Anthony Davis thing. He has options, right? Someone's going to pay him bajillions of dollars. My point is this is not the last move by the Blazers, and I think ultimately they both win this trade. That's where I've come to that conclusion, Blazers wise. I think it's a lot more interesting than people understand.
Then who are the Blazers making the move for?
This offseason, I mean, you got to understand, like, Dame is still, like, they keep saying they're going to build around Dame. They're going to build around Dame. Billups wants to. But, like, the question is, I don't know. The answer is to you, I don't know. The interesting piece is though they have the flexibility now because when you have the CJ Dame stuff, like they account for basically 44% or 48% of their cap, and when you move the expiring Robert Covington, it gives you that flexibility to have only 98 million on your books. I don't think it's this big splash in free agency. I think it gives them at least the options to go, okay, we understand we're not that great right now. We understand we have some young pieces we like, and they have time to really assess where they are. I don't think this is a give all the answers on this pod right now moment. I think this is a they have time to adjust on the fly if they need to.
The biggest name that's a free agent this offseason that I could see potentially working for Portland is Bradley Beal.
Who also is a movable piece here in the next 2 days, possibly.
The other big names are all basically on ball guards. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving. After that, it's been a big drop off. It's only role Zach LaVine, who's gonna resign in Chicago, so it's not as important. Then you just have a big drop off after that. It's basically just role players.
Even more so why I think CJ is a possible move in the next 2 days. Because at that point, you completely unload. You completely give Dame the expectation that this is the team they're building around him. He's going to have the flexibility to understand what they're doing. He clearly doesn't want to leave. I mean, until Chris Haynes Chris Haynes is the big Portland Dames close circle guy for Yahoo. Until Chris Haynes says it, Dame-wise, I'm not believing anything I hear. Dame wants to be there, so I think this is intriguing just in terms of the salary for both teams moving forward. Any other thoughts on either of these deals before we get into some stuff that we think's coming, maybe, or anything that obviously we haven't even touched on the James Harden saga. I mean, James Harden might be a Philadelphia 76er come Tuesday at bedtime. So
No, he won't.
So you're fully on that train. We can move on if you want.
I'm fully on believing Adrian Wojnarowski that the Sixers called Brooklyn and Brooklyn didn't answer.
Glad you brought that up.
What Woj said. He said that Morey called Brooklyn and Brooklyn did not pick up the phone.
I've got the transcript.
They're not trading. Why would they? It doesn't make any sense. Are we just jumping into? Okay, yeah, we're jumping into that. Before, I kind of thought there was a possibility because I thought maybe Brooklyn's stupid, maybe James Harden wants out. It all seems like nothing. It seems like Philly is single-handedly trying to stir up rumors and cause something to happen.
That's 100% what's happening.
Hmm.
However, if you're Sean Marks and you understand that James Harden might not be resigning with you anyway, because James Harden came to the Nets last year. Here's the point that I took away from this. James Harden came to the Nets last year, and we saw this revitalization where when Kyrie and Kevin Durant were doing their thing and Harden was able to not be the guy that we saw in Houston, he was the happiest he's ever been in his career. Where he's the guy that can get to the playoffs with a guy like Joel Embiid would be really nice if you're a Philly fan or if you're a Philly front office person or coach. If you can get James Harden healthy and Joel Embiid healthy into the playoffs, like that team's coming out of the East if everything goes right. My point being is you see a potential here where Brooklyn has to really understand James Harden might not re-sign this offseason because with the stuff with Kyrie could be a speculation. Kevin Durant's defended everything he can about James, but Brooklyn has to at least think about this for the next 2 days. However, I'm glad you brought up the conversation from January where came out with Ramona Shelburne and Adrian Wojnarowski that this was a discussion between Daryl Morey and Nets general manager Sean Marks in January on the phone. What about James? James who? Marks responded. James Harden. No, Marks said flatly and hung up. So the only James sounds like that might be moving, at least in January. This was a month ago. The only James that might be moving off the Nets is James Johnson. So, and I'm not sure that's even worth thinking about right now if you're Brooklyn. So I think it's just going to be this self-reflection moment. I think people are going to realize this is going to be really tense for the next 2 days, right? Like from the time this pod goes up Tuesday, it's going to be this really awkward stalemate because like Brooklyn really has to understand here. They lose James Harden to free agency. They lost him for nothing. If you can get a 25-year-old, top 5 defender in the NBA that Ben Simmons can be and facilitator and a point guard that he could be, Ben Simmons is not a bad basketball player. People don't understand that. Like prior to all this stuff with Philly, you're getting a James Harden trade. Yes, it might be a downgrade with Simmons, but like you're getting something. Harden could be leaving in 3.5 months.
But getting a facilitator and a point guard doesn't help them. They have Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving is a ball dominant shooting basically guard at that point. He's a shooting guard at that point.
Ball dominant.
Kevin Durant. Yes. So if he is getting the ball from a guy like Ben Simmons, or if Ben Simmons just stands in the way or stands out of the way and plays defense, it's better than losing Harden altogether. You're at that point. You're trusting that they're going to win.
Here's, I think, the thing that's being overlooked in all this. KD's coming back this year, right? Like he's going to play again this season.
About 3 weeks.
Yeah. Harden's gonna play again soon if he's like in that weird I'm hurt but I'm not area. Which Eastern Conference team are you taking over Durant, Harden, and Irving all playing together?
What does my logistical brain say? Miami. What does my
legitimately you think you get all three, Irving, Harden, and Durant playing together? Miami's a favorite instead. Yeah, Miami's gonna win, not them.
Miami has all their players for the series if it's a 7-game series. That's legitimately right now my concern with Kyrie is I can't fathom the fact he's going to play half the series.
Maybe
and if you get a guy,
we don't even know if it's going to still be that way by that point.
The Ben Simmons fit
because we heard Kyrie wasn't going to play all year, and now he plays the away games.
Yeah.
So
my issue is if I'm Sean Marks, I have to understand he either has to really think Harden's signing an extension, which right now it's I think it's like 50-50. Like right this moment, James Harden's not at Brooklyn Net this year, or after this year.
Sean Marks' job
Is
is to win a championship.
That's true. That's true.
If you trade Harden now, you're basically saying we're not going to do it this year. Maybe we can do it in the future once Kevin Durant has left, basically. This franchise has never won a championship since joining the NBA. You take it, whether you think Harden's leaving or not, you take your best shot because this is the best shot they're going to get. Making this trade with Philly is not going to make the shot better in the future. This is the best shot they have. I believe that fully. This is the best this Brooklyn team will be.
As strong as the East is, though, right? Like, even with the East being this strong, right?
Yes, but this is the strongest shot they have to win an NBA title, and they've never done that. So Sean Marks' job is to keep that together and see if it will work.
If Harden doesn't come back, there's no keeping that together. That's my thing. Is like, yes, you win this year.
Well, you see if it can work now, because no titles to one is a big achievement as a GM. They are 100%. Not going to fire him for letting James Harden go if he holds on to him and brings a championship.
Albeit, this is the same Sean Marks whose judgment was who had the similar salary, was to get rid of Jared Allen in that Harden deal and not DeAndre Jordan in some salary filler there. So this is the same guy who trusted the loyalty of the fact that DeAndre Jordan would stick around, and they moved him later on. So look, where I am right now is I'm not saying that it's a good idea for that to move him. What I'm saying is if I'm Brooklyn, you need to at least understand what your consequences are here. If you don't foresee the fact that Ben Simmons isn't at least a valuable piece to you, because Philly could be like, cool, we want Harden. Like, here's Seth Curry, here's a pick, here's, even if they're not throwing Maxey in any deal, they know that. This is the Daryl Morey thing. You have to remember too. We haven't brought this up this whole segment. This is the other end of this. This is Daryl Morey we're talking about. So there is a scenario where they throw in some stupid Maxey or Matisse Thybulle piece. Like it is not off the table. Daryl Morey and James Harden have a great relationship. He was able to keep him in Houston and basically keep each other a job for a long time as they were trying to win those West Series. At the end of the day, nothing's off limits for the next 48 hours because of the fact that it's these two guys that we're talking about here in packages. So Morey and Marks, that is. So I trust.
I think it'd be a massively bad idea.
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying they at least need to ponder.
Of all the teams in the NBA that Ben Simmons could go to, I think Brooklyn might be one of the least beneficial for the receiving team.
Obviously, if you're Philly,
I think that
Harden,
Brooklyn would have about the least value of a Ben Simmons trade of any team in the league. It just doesn't make any sense.
The other interesting part.
There's a reason he hung up and didn't discuss it.
No, that's going off of what you just said too. That's the future implications of the Ben Simmons piece of this is interesting because if he doesn't get moved in the next 2 days, at this point, I'm not sure there's a suitor this offseason yet. People are going to have to really evaluate stuff. It's going to be post-draft. They're going to have to figure out what makes sense at the guard position because there's about 24 teams that like their point guard. So,
you know who Philly needs to be calling if they want to make a Simmons trade? Sacramento. It's the one I think makes the most sense. As weird as that is. If you're Philly and you want to make your run now, go get you your Buddy Hield and your Harrison Barnes. Add them to the roster, get some picks, and send Simmons on his way.
I'm not sure who Sacramento wants to move because they don't want to move De'Aaron Fox. That's the one where you're like, okay, cool. That's the
but De'Aaron's going to leave.
De'Aaron's locked up for the next 3.5 years.
Did he sign an extension?
Did.
I forgot about that. Before things
paid almost $34 million a year. Almost.
Before things all went to crap.
I mean, if we're doing like an overpaid contract draft right now, if you and I were just do a fun segment, De'Aaron Fox would be a top 4 pick.
Number 1, John Wall.
Which, look, don't be shocked if there's a trade to like a place like OKC and a buyout with John Wall here.
John Wall could get traded at the deadline. He's just not going to play anywhere.
Yeah, he'll
get scooped up by some contender that needs a point guard.
It'll be a Kemba Walker scenario.
Here's looking at you, Boston.
Oh, Dennis Schroeder's another guy that Dennis Schroeder might not be a Boston Celtic in the next 2 days either. So there's a lot of things that go over potentially, but
Every time we enter a trade deadline, inserts rostered player here might not be a Boston Celtic on blank day.
fair point. Let's
Except for
not.
maybe All-Star Jason Tatum.
Oh yeah, All-Star reserve. We'll get to that in just a second. So I do want to pick your brain a little bit because I'm not entertaining the fact that the Lakers are making a move. If they are, I don't see it coming, and I don't understand what it is, so I'm not entertaining it today.
Yeah, I
I'll
heard
entertain
LeBron
it
quoted, "We're all in this together."
literally an hour and a
What
half
he
ago.
said today.
So I'm not entertaining the Lakers thing. We'll talk about it afterwards if they do on Monday. So my question for you is two things quickly before, so we can get on to All-Star snubs and some college. What do you want the Hornets to do, and then what do you think they will do? And don't give me this "they're not doing anything" answer because there's a lot of potential. This is probably the most busy bit deadline potential for them in a long time.
I want them to get a defender,
Who is
preferably a
your
3-and-D guy
who is your perfect
or
idea?
a big man defender. What?
Every team wants a 3-and-D player. Who's the one that you want right now that seems legit? That seems like
Who do I
legitimate.
want above anyone else? I'd like to have Miles Turner. I just don't think it's going to happen. It doesn't. So the Miles Turner thing may or may not help this year because of whatever his injury status is, which Indiana's been very vague about. But
Yeah,
adding Miles Turner to our franchise, forget if he doesn't play this year. Next year, it would be great to have him in the roster. We'd be really set if we could have him starting at center in Charlotte. I don't think that there's a big need in Charlotte to go get that big defensive rim defender. I don't think it's going to happen.
So again, another deadline
because everyone wants more than Mitch Kupchak's willing to give up.
Yeah, Mitch has definitely been a conservative fellow here at the deadline in the last couple of years. I don't see him doing anything either. I just wanted to see.
He's made one trade at the deadline since being the Hornets general manager. Can you name what it is?
Was it Plumlee?
No, that was right before the draft.
Oh, that's right.
Actually, he's made two trades.
Period.
Two trades, two like mid-season trades in his time as Hornets GM. The first one was right after he took over. He traded a second-round pick to New York for Willy Hernan Gomez.
Oh.
Last season, right before the deadline, he traded a second-round pick to Golden State for Brad Wanamaker. That is the total sum of the deadline draft trades by Mitch Kupchak over the past 4 or 5 years as Hornets general manager. So when you say, what do I think they're going to do? Nothing. Have a lot of conversations and then do nothing. I know you didn't want that as the answer, but that's what's going to happen. If they actually do something, which they probably should considering the slump that's going on, although I trust in Borrego and I think they're going to figure it out. They probably should do something, but it's not going to happen. They're not going to get it worked out. Everyone wants other teams want too much on what would be a potential rental for Charlotte. Charlotte has gotten better, but they're not in the place to buy a rental. You kidding?
So
you don't trade. Sorry for jumping in again. You don't trade James Bouknight, which that's one of the key things that's bouncing around for a guy that you don't think is going to resign. If you're Charlotte, that's idiotic.
100%. Couldn't agree more. My problem is though, it's similar. Actually, not a problem. I kind of agree. My thing is, it's like the Grizzlies this year. Like the Hornets have the potential to be what the Grizzlies are this year. Maybe not this year, but next.
Maybe.
But that's the thing. The Grizzlies aren't doing anything right now. They're going to try to win this in the next couple of years. Like they're going to try to. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Charlotte right now can get back on track. They're a team that 3 weeks ago you were like they're going to be a 6 seed. Like you're like I'm confident in January that they're not going to be in the play-in. Like I agree with you, and it's tough. It's a tough East, and you got to get to the All-Star break in that 7 spot or better. So, really quickly on our way out here, I'm going to ask you this on the fly because I think I have one, and I want to see what your thoughts are. Is who right now that's a quote what we would call a panic button team? On top of your head, you don't have to give me a scenario, you don't have to give me a player, but who right now do you think could be a potential panic button trade deadline team?
in a good way, or it's like a team I think is making a decision because they're panicking.
Either or. Give me a panic button trade deadline team,
I
however you want
think
to put it.
Collins getting traded out of Atlanta.
Wow.
Big panic move.
Wow. Hold on. I was going Atlanta that way too. I wasn't going Collins though. Okay. We
I
can
think the
leave
Hawks
that one.
could panic about the fact that they were second in the East last year and they're in 10th place right now. They're in a worse spot than the Hornets are.
Mm.
And Collins is the name that gets bounced around with some significant rumors about his fit / happiness. I don't know if any of them are true, but there's a lot out
Mine is unfortunately New York. Atlanta was my other one. I think New York sits and goes, okay, we understand what we can be, we understand what we've been.
there. Playoff team.
Playoff team, and I just think that they can. No, I think that
Understand what we can't be, a playoff team.
no, I think New York or Toronto are two teams that may try to make things weird here at the deadline, as quote panic teams that are on the fringe,
Toronto's been on fire. They won like five in a row.
as they're playing Charlotte tonight. That you're half
Yep.
watching while we're
And
recording.
doing well. Sorry, I am watching. Yeah.
All good. No,
I am paying attention to the podcast, however.
we are ready to move on to All Star Snubs because that trade deadline was fun. I can't wait to talk about what actually happened, which has playoff, draft, off-season implications. Very quickly, we'll transition here to the snubs. I guess we should actually formally introduce who was selected. I feel like that would be kind of important because we didn't have the reserves when we recorded
Run
last.
them down.
So whenever
Run down the list.
this loads. Here we go. So in the East, we already knew these starters. Kevin Durant was replaced as a captain by Jason Tatum. I actually don't know if that means Jason Tatum's drafting or not. They didn't really make that clear in the press release. So as of right now, we're going to assume that Jason Tatum is drafting this team here in the next couple of days. But Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Trae Young, and DeMar DeRozan were out of the East starters. Can you confirm while I'm reading these drafting the team?
I believe that based on what they did last year, Durant will draft the team. And
See, that's so
he won't
stupid.
play.
That's so stupid. He's not on the team. He shouldn't draft it.
He did last year.
Being coached on the East by... Actually, that is a good question. Who's coaching the Eastern team? I know Monty Williams is out West. Who's got the best record in the East right now? Am I blanking on that? Is it Steve Nash? I think it's Steve Nash. No, wait, they're like 7th. Hold on. I have no idea.
The Nets are in like 7th. Is it usually whoever has the best record in the East?
It is. Find that out for me. Really
best record is Miami. So Spoelstra?
I think it's Spoelstra. Anyway, East reserves: Jimmy Butler, Darius Garland, James Harden, Zach LaVine, Chris Middleton, Jason Tatum, Fred VanVleet. And then, as we found out today, I had a handful of snubs, and LaMelo was going to be number 1 on that list. And I was going to bring it to Josh and let him be mad. But there's now 4 snubs on each side that I have as potentials.
LaMelo!
So the East, we'll go over the way we're going to do this. I'm going to read the rest of these. We'll do 4. I have 4 snubs for Josh. Let him give his thoughts on each of those, and we'll discuss. On the West side of the country, the reserves after John Morant, Steph Curry, Wiggins, Jokic, and LeBron was Devin Booker, Luka Doncic, Rudy Gobert. Draymond Green injury is being replaced by DeJounte Murray. Really great addition there for the West. Donovan Mitchell, Chris Paul, and Karl Anthony Towns. I think the West is literally perfect, so the West is going to be really boring probably for this segment. The East, however, kind of interesting. So I'm going to start with the East.
West is perfect.
I think
All-Star Andrew Wiggins?
Oh, okay. So I was talking about the reserves and like the snubs. Yeah, all right. I'm going to start with the East. All right. And after hearing that, and after you thinking this through for the last 7 days, because you know that's what we were going to talk about, is snubs. Duh, people like snubs. I'm just going to name each one of these. You can give me thoughts, or yes, you would replace this guy with that guy. You can give me however you want to do it. Jared Allen. Was he snubbed, and if so, for who?
No, not snubbed. He's having a good year, but he's not quite there yet.
I agree. I think it's close. Domantas Sabonis.
No.
I agree. I don't think it's very close. I'm gonna leave this last guy for last year. I'm gonna go with another one instead. Miles Bridges.
Snubbed.
Do you actually believe that though?
If LaMelo's an all-star and Miles is having a better season, then he's an all-star.
I agree. I think he's had a better year than Chris Middleton. And I
Yes.
don't think that's a hot take. I think the Chris Middleton thing is what every big NBA media show right now is doing, and we're not going to touch that because like it's obvious he's the snub miss here. Like if you had to take a non Chris Middleton guy off the East, who would it be? It's got to be Chris Middleton every time. That's the problem. He's just not
Tatum.
been Tatum. Okay, Tatum, by the way, who was replaced as a starter reserve. Like he was like the guy that replaced Durant. Still ridiculous. Again, changed the whole All Star voting format. Lastly, the one I think is actually a really fun conversation is Tyler Hero.
Ah, 6 men don't get in the All-Star game, do they?
22 points per game, 6 men on a top 3 team and a loaded East do probably though, or maybe.
I'd love to see Hero make it, but probably not snubbed.
All right, Anthony Davis.
No, you got to play.
Yeah,
Be an
no, because he
all-star.
missed 5 weeks. Period. There was no. That told you the West was boring.
You got to play to be an all-star. Sorry, AD.
Jaren Jackson Jr.
See, that one's tough. Can you give me the forwards that made it again?
Gobert, Draymond was replaced by DeJounte Murray, so it would be Karl Anthony Towns, technically Draymond Green, and Rudy Gobert.
If I had the option to swap Triple J for a player on the Western Conference All-Stars, I'd swap him for Andrew Wiggins and put Triple J in.
Unfortunately, that's how that works. That's not how that works. So I guess in
Sure
this
it is.
case, yeah, in this hypothetical world, it is.
It's a forward.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Yeah, I would agree, but that's not how this works. So
I
realistically, technically, Jaren Jackson is not a snub. Then
like Triple J, but yeah.
I do too. But who right now over that list that Andrew Wiggins is in? You understand that he's in. Like you're not.
No, I'm not putting
running
Triple J over Cat, Draymond
or Gobert.
Gobert. No.
All right. He'll have his time. And then the last two I think are very interesting. Mikal Bridges,
No.
third best player.
Too many Suns are on the All-Star team already.
That's fair. And lastly, this one I think is one we're going to agree on is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
No.
Really? I want to hear more because there's a couple of throw arounds there that you could think that you could
give me your pitch for you clearly think you should be in. Convince me.
So
Grayson.
The West is hard. That's the thing. So like the West is really difficult too. I think there's a case he gets in over Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell has been awesome. He's made it 3 times in 5 years. I understand that. But I also have to understand that this Thunder team is performing well and above the expectation that you had. To be clear, that I had him almost in the play-in. Let's make sure that's on the. I had him at 11.
So well I'm under your expectation, well over mine. Yeah. Well over mine.
Well, yeah. But Shai's an unbelievable player who he's never going to get the All-Star recognition that he deserves because he's playing Oklahoma City until they start winning 45 games, which is not his fault. It's not the All-Star game's fault. Like, that's how it's set up. I get it. But Gobert is more impactful this year to his team than Mitchell is. And I'm not a fan of two guys on the same team just because they're a decent player averaging 24 points a game. Like, that's the Mitchell argument. Is Shai
okay, then who we kick in between CP3 and Devin Booker then?
Devin Booker.
I didn't expect you to answer that question.
Chris Paul is having, I told you 2 weeks ago, Chris Paul is having a top 5 like MVP conversation season.
Yeah, I just didn't expect you to answer the question.
I mean, if we're picking, like, I don't love it, but I think but you can't do that with 2 teams in the West. I don't love that. I don't love that the Jazz get 2 guys and the Suns get 2 guys. I think the Suns deserve 2 guys because they are 41-9. It's the best start in franchise history. You have a top 5 MVP candidate in Chris Paul. You have a 24-point per game Devin Booker. You are playing unbelievable defense. You're playing unbelievable offense. You have every reason to prove that you're the best team. You deserve 2 All-Stars. And I love those 2 guys, and I would rather have them get 2. I just think the Shai over Mitchell thing is just more of a conversation that people should be willing to have. So, unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to play anyway because of injuries. Obviously, I'm throwing injuries out the window for these examples because Draymond Green's not playing either. So, any other conversations when it comes to the All-Star game and the snubs? Obviously, we'll touch on the All-Star game in 2 weeks when it concludes on that Monday.
Here's my snub. What got snubbed was the dunk contest and how little attention the NBA now pays to it.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm. It's still one of my favorite competitions, and it's really just been put on the back burner now, and it's pretty disappointing.
Whatever the last Gordon Levine one was when they completely lost me and the 3-point contest took over.
Yeah. Well, Aaron Gordon got robbed.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade will never live that down.
The last time, and
I mean, the fact that the 3-point contest is awesome, by the way. The fact that there's a pitch right now for Bobby Portis to be in it is awesome. Like, could you imagine?
3-point contest is fine.
For the people, it would be
skills challenge is fine. The dunk contest, just like we're having Cole Anthony, Obi Toppin,
Juan Toscano Anderson.
Yeah, just.
And there's one more we're forgetting. There's another.
I'm not saying they wouldn't be interesting, but like.
I think Obi Toppin has this one in the bag, no?
Like, I don't know. You never know. Sometimes it's not about how big you are or how high you can jump. It's how creative you can be. But even that, like the judging is just not like they get a lot of celebrities up there on the panel that couldn't care less really about being there.
Yeah.
And aren't like paying attention to the stuff. Because I remember going back to the Gordon got robbed one. Pat Connaughton was in that dunk contest. Pat Connaughton did some of the most creative, coolest stuff I've ever seen, and they just didn't pay attention to what he was doing. Like there was so much of the announcers were pointing out how they just weren't realizing the stuff that Pat Connaughton was pulling off in that dunk contest and how difficult it was, and they weren't rating him well. It's just disappointing to me.
There's no perfect guest panel because, like, at the same time, on the flip side, they have like 65-year-old NBA players. Nothing against Julius Erving, like he obviously was a dunk king, but like they've had Julius Erving up there before. Like you just need to find a good balance, right?
Get the big time dunkers. Do a panel of previous winners. Give the Dwight Howard, Nate Robinson. MJ won't do it, but
Jason Richardson,
Dr. J,
Jason Richardson. That's a good one too.
Who?
Jason Richardson.
That's a good
one too. He was a two-time champion.
Levine, just get me a panel of. Vince Carter on there. Give me a panel of the best dunkers who know what they're looking for and let them judge it.
You didn't like my Spud Webb comment. Spud Webb.
Put Spud on there, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I was talking about 70-year-old guys and Spuds, who I mentioned. I'm looking forward to the Friday. If we're ending on this, I'm looking forward to the Friday night change with the. I already love the Rising Stars comp. It's for all these guys that it's the Desmond Baines of the world to get this platform where people might not realize Desmond Baines having an unbelievable season, an Andrew Wiggins level season, and people are going to get to see him in full force in a 3-on-3 tournament, or whatever it is. It's like the street ball tournament. So
another area of the All-Star Weekend where LaMelo will be competing. Hopefully, LaMelo should also enter the skills challenge. Just make it a 3-night affair because he's already playing Friday and Sunday. So,
yep. I will say this really quickly before we transition to College Hoops Corner. We don't normally do live reaction to stuff, but I just got a report. It says Simmons unlikely to be traded. 76ers guard is not likely to be dealt before the 2022 NBA. It says draft. I'm assuming they mean deadline. Philadelphia Inquirer. So that is live reaction to a Philadelphia Inquirer article. Obviously, it's coming from one of the sides, so I fully don't believe it, but we're at least going to mention it because it just popped up.
So you want to talk about live reaction? Virginia just beat Duke at home.
Wow. Well, that's a live segue. Let's just go ahead and segue
into number 7 Duke just lost to Virginia in Cameron Indoor off of a last-second shot by Reese Beekman. 69-68.
I'm going to transition to this. I was going to give you a choice whether we do Duke first or my contender pretender a month before here, but UNC Duke thoughts since Duke just lost to Virginia following a Carolina beating.
My thoughts about UNC Duke?
Yeah.
What about it?
Disappointed, right? I mean, you're a fan. You're a fan of the school. You're a fan of the school. You're a Tar Heel. You're a fan.
Yes, disappointed.
Right? Right? Like that. Does it feel good knowing that you have a chance to spoil his absolute last game as a coach? Feels good, right? Like that's what I thought. I took away from that. I was like, I'm not a fan of either team. To be clear to everybody, I'm a fan of the red team in our area. But you have a chance on March 5th to walk into Cameron Indoor and be a spoiler of one of the biggest basketball things ever.
Yes, but also it's that game beyond like the primary motivation of that game has nothing to do with being a spoiler of Coach K's last game in Cameron Indoor.
Fair. That's fair.
UNC is still a team that's in the tournament fight. It's you need to go in there, you need to beat big teams.
Yeah, I saw a stat yesterday. It's like, 0-8 against, Ken Palm top 60 teams, right? Multiple 20-point losses. They are a team that can win games. It's just defense is not going to be the way they're going to do it. But this Virginia thing is interesting because obviously Virginia, this is not the Virginia that we're used to under Tony Bennett, but I'll transition to the one
This
we
is a
just saw
Virginia
live.
that UNC blew out by 20.
Right. So it's the parody of college basketball, and
Mhm.
it's a great transition to contender pretender
20
in
or
just a
more.
second. But it just shows the vulnerability of some of these teams that we think might be unbeatable, even in February. So obviously Carolina Duke was a big deal. I got finished with all the stuff I was doing on Saturday and we came straight to the couch to watch it. So it's always a big deal. It's always a fun rivalry. It just, you want it to be close. You want it to be fun. So I am looking forward to the spoiler role, whether you like it or not. I'm looking forward to them trying to come in and show up and kill Duke. So, um, my contender pretender thing for you I had was very brief because we obviously want to talk about trivia here, where you have a chance to go up by 10 points. Uh, the top 25 obviously came out this morning. I want to just touch on the fact that there are a couple teams that I want your thoughts on that we may have not had a chance to come back to or kind of address, or I knew you were high on Purdue, teams like that, right? So I want to give you outside of the top 3 or 4, because Purdue is a 3, Gonzaga. This is as of today. Auburn's 1, Gonzaga's 2, Purdue's 3, and I'm going to stop there. All right. I'm going to give you a range of 4. You know what? Let's go 4 to 20, because I think that's the last team that has a legit chance to win the title, or 21 if you want to count USC at 19-4. So from USC to Arizona, from 19-4. Right now, give me 2 contenders and 2 pretenders. While you're thinking about it, because I know you're like, what the heck? I'm going to give you one of mine. We'll start with one. If you don't have one, I think Houston, despite the injuries, I think Houston is the real deal. I think Houston has a chance, like you mentioned last year. Houston made the Elite Eight last year. We know they're what they are, but I think Houston, in a very weak conference this year, is the real deal and has a chance, depending on their matchups when Selection Sunday comes. I think that's going to be really big for them because they are obviously very, very good in certain aspects. And I think the matchup might kill them depending on who it is. I think Houston's my first contender.
Contenders, I like Kentucky.
It's a good
I
one.
think Calipari has really picked it up with this team, and I think they're incredibly talented. They proved it against Kansas.
Yeah, that most impressive win of the year by far. By the way, like went into Allen Fieldhouse. I almost forgot the name of it, and they won by 20. Kansas is no slouch.
I still like Baylor despite some of the struggles.
Really, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So that's your 2.
Yeah.
Kentucky and Baylor. Okay. Give me your argument for Baylor, because I think, yes, they're still good. They lost to Texas Tech. They lost to this guy. I think they lost to Alabama. Like the spoiler team at this point, Alabama's going to be whoever they play. Whoever they should play in the tournament. Somebody on the other end should be nervous because Alabama's playing spoiler at all the big teams this year. Who has the hardest schedule by far? Alabama's non-conference was one of the hardest schedules in the country. Give me the Baylor argument.
I think with Baylor, the only struggles that we're seeing for them is going into some really raucous away environments. Like the struggle came against Alabama, against Kansas,
Texas Tech too.
at both of them. Yeah, but Texas Tech is a very good team. That was a narrow game.
Yeah.
So I don't see that one as much as a bad loss for Baylor. But once again, it's one of those teams that's been there recently. I'm trusting Scott Drew's coaching, and I don't think anybody's going to look around and be shocked if Baylor's sitting in the Elite Eight come March.
All right. I'll give you my other one quickly. Michigan State. I think Michigan State has a chance to, again, get a top 3 or 4 seed, be very, very nerve-wracking to somebody they play very early on. They're going to be a very big – I always find a team once a year where I go, I really like this team. Hint, hint, San Diego State. I really like this team where I go, if you know, you know. I really like this team, but gosh, do they need to play a couple of bad teams in the first two rounds to really make me feel better about them past the Sweet 16? And Michigan State's that team this year.
Rutgers was a bad team. Rutgers beat
Michigan,
Michigan State by 21 points.
Rutgers is not. Rutgers is a lot better than people think on paper. Michigan State though, for real though, they if
Rutgers
they
is
get a good
13
matchup,
and 9.
shut up. If Michigan State gets a good matchup in the first two rounds, I think Michigan State can make the Final Four. Problem is, it's those first two rounds. They play any team that can play smothering defense. They're in trouble. Michigan.
So my first pretender is Michigan State.
Oh, don't do this to me. Oh, come on. There's no other team that jumped out.
I always think Izzo's a pretender.
That's fair.
Sorry.
That's fair.
I don't mean that. That was a joke. But I will say I don't particularly believe in this Michigan State team. To be honest, I don't know after that.
There's
my thoughts on who the contenders are is a lot smaller. Like anyone in really that 11 to 21 range that you gave me. Like as for like your Arizonas, Kentucky's, Houston's, Duke's, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, I feel pretty good about those teams.
Okay. They're going to be top 2 seeds. So, yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, top 2 or 3. That's 10 teams there at the top. After that, not a lot of teams after that really jump out to me as this team could contend, like to win.
There's one.
So they're kind of just all middling around.
There's 2 staring us right in the face. One particular, UCLA. They're right there at 12. You didn't say they weren't a contender. You didn't say they weren't a pretender. Where are we?
I called them a pretender at the beginning of the year.
Okay. Where are we right now when they're still top 12 ranked?
I mean, they can be a Sweet 16 team, but
okay. We're shifting. Okay. That's good. We're shifting to a team.
No, I never said they weren't. I was at the beginning of the year when people were like, this is the second best team in the country. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Like they could make it the second weekend, sure.
We also know that
I think plenty of teams can make it the second weekend.
We also know they're a very strong momentum team. I think this year's UCLA in that sense is Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is another one. I'm not calling them a pretender, but I'm not saying that Johnny Davis can't take over for 5 straight rounds and just.
If you want to if you're trying to find yourself a UCLA comparison, you got to get off the top 25, go to bracketology, and find your last 4 in, and then make your pick. I don't mean let's not downgrade the craziness of what happened last year.
I mean, top tier, older talent that can take them really far, and that was referring to the Johnny Davis comparison. I think Wisconsin's going to be really scary. My 2 pretenders, I'm sorry, Providence fans, I hate to do this to you. You're 20-2. You're probably the luckiest team this year. Your KenPom shows that. You are a pretender at 11. Josh named 10 teams ahead of you, and rightfully so, they're all 1 through 10. So sorry, Providence fans. The other one I have, unfortunately, is Marquette. I am not a fan of Marquette this year. I don't understand the buzz. I think Tennessee's better. I think Texas is better. I think USC is better. I think St. Mary's is better. I'm just talking about teams in the top 25. So there is my little gashing of those 2. But that's where I am with contender pretender. Any other thoughts on the top 25 before we transition very smoothly into potentially could be a what are we calling a kill shot of me in trivia? What we're calling it.
I'll say as far as college hoops, the next thing I'm really looking forward to is the committee usually comes out with that. These are our top 16 teams. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Seeing where they say things stand. Because the AP poll is great, but that's not what things will ever actually look like.
Yeah. To quote the great John Rothstein, we sleep in May. All right. Trivia is here. And to say that I'm probably the most excited I've ever been for a trivia would be an understatement. This is the most excited I've ever been for a trivia because I actually brought it. I actually brought it this time. You're excited because you have a chance to absolutely blow me out of the water. I'm just going to get right to the chase. We've been doing this about 45 minutes or so. So you have 6 possible points for people who don't understand. In the fairness of the way that we set up this stupid segment, we are there are both, by the way, no rules and rules at the same time. You have an opportunity, like I said, for 6 points. How well do you know the NBA trade deadline? I did this for 2 reasons. One, Uh, gonna have to make you creative next week because we're gonna do a trade deadline recap, hopefully with a guest. Working on that this week, and I'm gonna make you at least be creative next week. Second of all, I did not go with Grayson's recommendation, unfortunately, because I did way too much research for this podcast. I texted Grayson. For those who might not know, friend of the show, Grayson, and I
Resident trivia moderator at the
moderator. Yeah, at this point, go ahead and get your questions prepared at this rate because we're going to need as fair as humanly possible again. So, I was texting Josh about my research for this trivia, and I will talk about the specific person and whatnot afterwards. But I was texting Grayson, and I mentioned I was like, there's this guy. Actually, you know what? It won't actually spoil anything. For those that might remember the G League question Josh asked for me, guys that were drafted out of the G League, Chukwudibiri Madwabum. Did I say that right?
Also known as Choo Choo.
Choo Choo Madwabum.
Yep.
And I texted Josh and I said, just so you know, in my preparation for today, I ran across the name Choo Choo Madwabum. And Josh replies, oh boy. So I texted Grayson and I said, you should have him do every guy that's ever been traded that was a G Leaguer at one point. And I said, that would be foul.
What?
Yeah, I said, that would be foul. So, what I came up with is 6
How
different
would you
questions.
even get that?
Couldn't tell you. I'd have him send me the answers. So, I came up with 6 questions, and I stuck with the 6th theme. And I told you we always try to stay theme here. The theme is the last 6 trade deadlines. What do you remember about the last 6 trade deadlines? Without delaying anything, we're going to begin.
So these are individual questions?
Individual questions. Same format as last week.
I get one guess, 1 point each.
Correct.
Is the last one like an open answer like I did for you? Or
Nope.
No?
6 questions.
All right.
6
well,
answers.
let's have a good time.
How well do you know the last 6 trade deadlines? Question number 1. There were 3 players traded at the deadline in 2021 all with the same name. It is the only time in NBA history that all players in the NBA at that current moment with the same name were traded on the same day. What was that name?
Same first and last name?
Same first name, sorry. Same first
name.
name.
First name. Okay.
Same first name. All 3 players had the same first name. What is that name? Not that this is a hint, but we did talk about this last year on our trade deadline recap. If I remember correctly, it was like the first thing I brought up. No extra bonus points because you're obviously getting 6, but if you get the name right and you can name the 3 players, that would be impressive. It's hard enough thinking of the name itself. So,
Aaron.
It's a really good guess.
No.
Unfortunately, that is not correct. The answer is Gary.
Gary.
For fun, can you name the 3 Garys that were all traded on
Gary
trade deadline
Harris, Gary Payton II.
No.
Gary Trent.
Got 2 out of 3. It was Gary Clark, Gary Trent Jr., and Gary Harris.
Our guy, Gary Clark.
Yeah, shout out to the tri-area. Really funny though. Clark and Harris were traded for each other, and that was only the second time in NBA history that players with the same first name were traded for each other. Crazy to think that actually happened once. Good guess. Unfortunately, right now you are 0 for 1. We're going to move on to 20. That was the 2021 deadline. We're going to move on to the 2020 deadline, which, by the way, was very boring. So this question was very difficult for me. The question says, a player averaging 15.2 rebounds per game was traded to the Cavaliers in the 2020 deadline. Who is that player?
Andre Drummond.
Ding, ding, ding. Andre Drummond is correct. Unfortunately, that was the only hard question I could think of in the 2020 NBA draft. I'm really disappointed in myself, and I am going to pull up that draft in just a second to make sure, not draft,
deadline.
Deadline. Thank you. I'm going to say draft a lot by accident. I don't know why. Right here it says, I have it right here. Andre Drummond, Pistons traded Marcus Morris, Isaiah Thomas, Mo Harkless, Jerome Robertson. That was a big 4-teamer. Iguodala, Jay Crowder, Dion Waiters, Justin Winslow. The other one was the Andrew Wiggins, D'Angelo Russell deal. I was gonna say there was a NBA All-Star starter that was traded, and I think that would have gave that away. I think you would have gotten that too. Shabazz Napier. I should have said like maybe a Yukon guard. I don't know. Like you would have thought it was Kimba, I guess. That was the one I think you were probably going to get no matter what. It's all downhill from here, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, I got a point. So
Hey,
9-4.
great job. A former number one overall pick was traded in 2019. Who was that player
At the deadline.
at the deadline?
Well, it wasn't Wiggins because he was traded the next year. So no, it's nothing to worry about.
Great context clues on your
Yeah.
part.
Markel Fultz.
Wow, that is impressive. Once again, struggled with this year as well to make it difficult. There was really not, unless I was going to have you ask like where Kelly Olynyk got traded. That was like my next like level of difficulty, and I didn't want to feel like that big of a butthead. So I was like,
Did he get traded to Miami?
I have no idea. I don't have pulled
Okay.
anymore. So, my point being is I should have went harder on you, and now I'm disappointed. I'm now 2 for 3 there. So
10-4. Back to the 6 point.
great job. Man, that's tough. I just completely lost every lead I had, or chance I had back there. I am confident you are not getting another point. I said that already, and I'm confident once again.
It's what you said before this last question.
I almost told you the team, and you got Fultz either way. So
Yeah, he's traded from Philly to Orlando, right?
yeah, and for fun, I had for fun written down as well. Can you name who he was traded for?
Terrence
Good luck.
Ross.
Jonathan Simmons in a first round top 20
yeah.
pick. Yeah, the famous Markel Fultz for Jonathan Simmons trade.
I think Orlando still made it out the best on that one.
Probably.
Yeah.
Number 4. A former star at the University of North Carolina was traded from the Pistons to the Grizzlies in 2018. Who was that player? I'll read it one more time while you're thinking. A former star at the University of North Carolina was traded from the Pistons to the Grizzlies in 2018.
Wayne Ellington.
That player. That's a really, really good guess. I kept it in this decade, though, and it was Bryce Johnson.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I told you these questions were not hard. Or not easy. I should have made the first 3 harder. And
I was
really
narrowing down someone who had Carolina star who had played for Detroit and Memphis, and I believe Ellington played for both.
I know he played for Detroit. I don't know about Memphis. It's a good guess, though.
I almost said Vince Carter, but I was like, he didn't play for Detroit.
It's a great guess. So, and now I'm regretting that the 2 and the 3 should have been harder. I feel like that Bryce Johnson one was kind of uncalled for, but it is hard, and you got me with in the past. So, good luck with question 5.
I didn't remember much about Bryce's career after being drafted by the Clippers.
Hey, if you remembered where he was drafted, that was problem number 1 for me. I knew he played on the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Enough about Bryce Johnson. Corey Brewer and Lou Williams were traded for each other in the pretty boring, by the way, probably the most boring of the 6, 2017 deadline. What teams were they on when they got traded? And you have to name them both.
Okay. What teams were they on when they got traded? And so they swapped.
Yeah.
Lou Williams was in Atlanta and Corey Brewer was in LA with the Clippers.
Both good guesses. You were off the mark, though. Lou Williams was in Los Angeles, but he was a Laker. And Corey Brewer was a Houston Rocket.
All right. You gave me Lou Williams, the Globetrotter, who's played for everybody.
Again, a just for fun parentheses here. Which of these players has scored more in an NBA game?
I'm say Brewer because the obvious answer would be Lou Williams.
Brewer scored 51 points in an NBA game. Lou Williams' career high is 50.
Good for Corey Brewer.
That was going to be my.
He's retired now, right?
Yeah, I believe he is. All right, great job so far. You have 2 points. I'm really proud of you. So, this is the whole reason I was looking for.
Before we get into it, is the last answer Choo-Choo Maverdome?
No. I will get to why he was brought up.
Okay.
Question number 6, the whole reason I even wanted to do this segment and give you even remotely a chance to score points, and I'm just shocked that you got 2. A former Kardashian lover was traded in a package deal that received Markieff Morris. What is the name of that former Kardashian lover?
Chris Humphries. I broke you it. No, that's right. Is there a second part of that question?
The correct answer is Chris Humphries. I just thought you wouldn't have known your Kardashians. I really thought that was going to get you. All right,
Don't
for
read the
fun.
news and they're everywhere.
For fun, who was he married to?
Who was
Who was
which Kardashian
Humphries?
was Chris
Yeah,
married
which
to?
Card? Yeah.
Kim.
Wow. Is it too early for me to retire? Like from trivia?
This is gonna make a funny segment.
This segment is
I got
completely
3 out of 6.
This this segment sucks.
I will say this was a really fun trivia. This is probably one of the most fun ones I've had.
Good for you. I had a lot of trouble making it, and I thought it was going to be an 0 for 6. I was only worried about Andre Drummond. Seriously, like that was it. I literally could have just done like the bottom feeders of the bench. Like I literally could have done that, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna word it funny. I'm gonna make it hard. All right. The whole reason Choo Choo Mad Will Bum was brought up. The Pistons traded Joel Anthony to the 76ers as well as a future first round pick to the Rockets. The Rockets
Joel
traded,
Anthony?
I'm gonna get to that. Hold on.
Who was that?
The former Heat center that was on those Heat teams with LeBron.
Oh.
Yeah. Pistons traded Joel Anthony to the 76ers as well as future first round draft pick to the Rockets. The Rockets traded Donatas Montiunas, I always remember how to say his name, Marcus Thornton to the Pistons, as well as a 2017 second round pick to the 76ers. And the 76ers part in this 4-team deal traded the draft rights to Choo Choo Madwilbum to the Rockets. And when I read that, I smiled and knew that this was the question for me. So I was like, here's a beautiful full circle moment. Congratulations on your lead. I'm not coming back next week. I just want you to know that now.
0-4. I guess I'm gonna have to figure out a way to give Trevor 7 points and we could possibly do.
I'm okay with just like stopping trivia. Like that's where I am. I'm good.
Oh, we're not stopping.
All right.
I'm gonna come in next week with who was the number 1 pick in the 2003 NBA draft.
Look, some guys go through slumps, and this is just a career slump for me. That's where we are. So, all right. Shockingly enough, I went an hour without a shameless plug. Shameless plug again. If you haven't checked out our article, this was a fun episode, by the way. I'm just ready to not vomit from this.
Before we get into the end of it, I just want to make one. Can you read the whole last question from trivia again? Because I kind of interrupted you before you read all of it.
No, that was it. A former Kardashian lover was traded in a package deal that received Markieff Morris. What is the name of that former Kardashian lover? You got it before I got to 4.
Oh, okay.
Just
so
yeah.
After given the timeline that I knew it was that we had moved back a few years, the second you said Kardashian lover, I knew it was Chris Humphries. I just couldn't remember his last name. So for the entire rest of what you were saying, I was just trying to pick out what Chris's last name was because I immediately pictured him and knew exactly who you were talking about. And I was just trying to remember his last name.
My thought process was you were going to be like, well, he was an abysmal NBA player. So I was like, maybe he'll just have slipped your mind with the media. He's been, look.
And that was the only thing about him that was like noteworthy is that he married Kim Kardashian.
Completely fair point. Yeah, I'm sick of trivia. Y'all love it though. That's what you're here for. Shameless plug really quick before we get out of here. Do not forget, if you haven't already, we are from the Triangle area, like we've said. We were featured on the lovely people of Voyage Raleigh on an article. It was in our last episode. We'll also share it on social media again this week, as well as don't forget all the social medias, facebook.com/2pointers podcast, Twitter @2pointers, and then Instagram and TikTok are both the same. It's the full name of the show. Anything else that you think I forgot before we close it out?
No, that's basically it. This was fun podcast day. Hopefully, yeah, I think next week will be more fun. We review the trade deadline, and hopefully has some fireworks. But I'm looking forward to it.
Not getting my hopes up just yet because we still got 48 hours. next few weeks is going to be on fast track for those that are fans and stick around every single week. We appreciate you. It'll be trade deadline recap. It'll be, oh my gosh, what did we say was after that? Oh, All-Star game review, or All-Star game recap, I guess, technically. Crazy how fast that's going to feel. I believe right after that would be the Selection Sunday. So you've got 3 action-packed episodes in 3 weeks, guys. Look forward to hearing all that. It might be close to the Selection Sunday. We might have one little filler one right there in between. I might be getting my weeks to march off, but after that, Josh, you remember last year. After that, it was just like we blinked and it was the playoffs. So, wow, yeah, looking forward to all of that fun content. We appreciate all the support, you guys. And
I think Selection Sunday is March 13th.
oh, they moved it. That's right. That's right. They moved it up a little bit, I think, because of the championship weekend, and Duke is on the.
Just because I know it's the week after the ACC tournament ends, and I was looking at that when the ACC tournament was today. So
that's right. So it was, yeah, because Duke Carolina's the 5th. ACC tournament's that week.
Is 8th through the 12th, and then so the 13th, the next day, would be selection show.
All right, we might could have a little. We'll have to get creative, have a little fun on that first week of March there. So
before we leave, Trevor, who's winning the Super Bowl?
That's a great question. I am riding with Joe Shiesty. I think Joe gets it done.
Aren't we all? We're all riding with Joey B.
My Bengals. To my Bengals.
And I just want to point this out. And this is not, I mean, this doesn't have to do with basketball, but I just think talking about what we find interesting outside of basketball should be interesting to other people. I don't know if that's arrogant, but for the first time, well, I think ever, I am really excited for the Super Bowl halftime show. Like, really excited. You know who's performing, right?
Yeah, the NBA has no comparison for like an exciting show. Like they did J. Cole at the Charlotte one a couple years ago, but like this is crazy.
This is like the best lineup the Super Bowl has ever done.
These young kids who are going to be rooting for Joe Burrow and well, really, that's the only good young quarterback in this Super Bowl. They're going to really, their parents are going to have more fun than the kids are. Like, yeah, I think it's what Mary J. Blige.
Young kids have no idea who these. You're like, no, it's Mary J. Blige, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and Kendrick Lamar.
Wow, yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's just Dre's record company. Yeah,
be a lot of fun.
Somebody that Dre signed.
Bengals as well. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Well, Think's going to win. I don't know if I think either one's necessarily going to win. I'm rooting for the Bengals. Couldn't care for the Rams. So couldn't care less for any of the NFC teams, to be honest, outside of the Panthers. So I'm going to root with the AFC here.
Go Bengals.
All right. Well, that being said, this has been the 2 Pointers podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm miserable.
And we will see you soon.